like a mom. She mom.
Did you guys bring buns? Search for somebody to sit there bring buns.
Endeavor. I like the vest.
I don't remember signing up to bring buns today.
Nailed the vest or something?
And umbrellas.
It's not the vest, it's the whole suit. It's the whole suit, huh? All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back to another great session for learning. Making our way through the Holy Land.
Are you on?
I think so. Maybe. I don't think so. Can you hear me?
That's good.
1, 2, 3, 6, 7.
Sound well?
Oh, silly me. I didn't even turn it on.
I was asking you, man. Just,
That's one thing to fix. Okay. Excellent. All right, welcome back, everyone. So last session, we finished talking about the Mount of Olives, where Jesus did some of his ministry, including where it's thought that he had taught the Lord's Prayer. And then from there, and we went into the Essene Quarter, where the upper room is thought to take place, and we had a good discussion about timelines and potential perspectives on what may have happened that week. And we're going to just keep diving into this. There's a lot of really interesting, I guess you would call them theories as to, how the timeline of the week went out leading up to his crucifixion. And I mean, none of us were really there, so it's not like we can say for certain that this is how it happened. But at least, trying to piece together the different books, the different Gospels, and, at the end of the day, I mean, Jesus died for our sins, so, just keeping that in perspective as well. And rose again. That's right. Okay. So yeah, we left off in the upper room. And after Jesus had his Last Supper with his disciples, then we know that he headed out to the Garden of Gethsemane. And so if we can get some readers, John 18, 1 through 12. Whoever gets to it first.
When Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth from his disciples over the ravine of the Kidron, where there was a garden, in which he entered with his disciples. Now Judas also, who was betraying him, knew the place, for Jesus had often met there with his disciples. Judas then, having received the Roman cohort and officers from the chief priests and the priestesses, Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. So Jesus, knowing all the things that were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus the Nazarene." And he said to them, "I am he." And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing with them. So when he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. For he again asked them, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these go their way, to fulfill the word which he spoke. Of those whom have given me, I lost no one." Simon Peter then, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his right ear. And the slave's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put the sword into the sheath, and the cup which the Father has given me, shall I not drink it?" You want the next one?
No.
So, is that good, or one more?
That's fine. That's good. Yeah. So the Garden of Gethsemane, Gethsemane actually is Hebrew for olive press. And this is the current Garden of Gethsemane. The olive press here actually is not located in this particular location, but I wanted to take a picture of what it actually looked like, because I don't know if you've ever seen an olive, like an actual olive off of a tree, not the preserved olives that you get from the grocery store. But olives are incredibly dense. And so to make olive oil, you have to crush them to be able to, extract the liquid. And so, yeah, they basically have this kind of a turntable where the rock can kind of roll around the center, and it basically it uses the force to kind of crush the seeds to get the oil out. And so it takes a huge amount of force to do that. And so, when we talk about Jesus, being led to his crucifixion, one of the common verses that is often attributed to the whole crucifixion scene was Isaiah 53:10. And I can read that for you so you don't have to page back. "So yet the Lord was pleased to crush him severely. When you make him a guilt offering, he will see his seed. He will prolong his days, and by his hand the Lord's pleasure will be accomplished." And so that's often attributed to, I don't know if necessarily it's a direct prophecy, but it's attributed that Jesus was crushed so that, our sins could be crushed. So the garden basically leads to the Basilica of the Agony. And so this is built up around the section of bedrock where Jesus is said to have prayed before he was arrested by Judas and the priests. And it's interesting, just like any other church, this was built on top of an old church, foundations led back to the 4th century Byzantine era, which actually was originally destroyed by an earthquake in 746, and then was later built up a 12th century Crusader chapel, which was abandoned in 1345. And then the most recent design was built between 1919 and 1924, and was designed by that common architect, the Antonio Barluzzi. And so this particular basilica now, you can see there's designs that are kind of built into it. Here's Jesus in the center. He's holding the Alpha and the Omega, the Greek symbols, wearing a red robe, which is designating his coming suffering. And then the deer at the top here comes from the book of Psalms 42. "As a deer longs for flowing streams, so I long for you, God." And so it kind of ties into, why he had come to the garden to begin with, which John doesn't actually touch upon, his prayer in the garden, but, the other Gospels will certainly expand on that, where he goes to pray, and then, he tells, I believe it's Peter, and he had a couple disciples with him to stay awake and, to keep watch. And then they kept falling asleep, and then, he'd come back and awake them and say, I got stuff to do, and you guys are falling asleep on me. But yeah, so, basically he was trying to connect with God with his Father to give him strength at what's going to, come. And, of all the places in Israel that we stopped at, I think this was actually one of the more touching areas, because, as we'll go into the church. I guess I should finish this thought. The church, so it was built so that the windows, you could see here, are actually translucent, but a really dark blue. And so it lets a little bit of the light in, but not a whole lot. So when you go in, it's supposed to be like, you're entering, a place of worship at night. So it's kind of like if you were in the garden, at night with Jesus. But yeah, as you go in, so there's a section of bedrock that had been kind of marked off, and this is thought that this is likely where he had stopped to pray. But yeah, just kind of keeping things in perspective, sitting there, in the quiet, just how hard that must have been, if you were Jesus, to know that the next day you're going to be ridiculed and, physically beaten and killed in probably one of the most worst ways you could be possibly killed, all in public display. I mean, how much strength that must have taken to just say, oh, all right, I'm going to do it. So it was...
Usually the flogging would kill you. They wouldn't even get to the
Yeah.
cross.
So, yeah, I mean, just to consider, all that. And you had to carry your own cross to get to the hill. Then they would nail you and then stick you up there, and then you bleed out. How much...
On top of that, the gravity from it pulling you down, that'll make you not breathe.
Right. So yeah, just considering, just sitting there in contemplation and thinking what you have to go through. Yeah, it was really touching to just sit there.
Jeff, did you explain what that is? I'm sorry.
So yeah, this is the bedrock. This is the area where it's thought he likely had prayed.
I believe in Matthew talks about not my will, but thine will be done. I mean, it talks about the prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other Gospels really go into more, what he was doing in the garden, but John really touches upon, the actual, he came to this area, the high priests and, people coming with the mob, so to speak, coming to arrest him. And these are actually two murals that are kind of representative of what we read in John. So the first over here is where, Jesus is illuminated in the center. And John mentioned how, when he said, I am he, the soldiers, the priests, that had fallen back, in awe from him. And so, referencing back to when we talked about the wedding of Cana, where Jesus said, my time has not yet come. I'm not revealed, or I don't want to be revealed just yet. Well, this is where his time has come. The soldiers approach, they drop back. Jesus is revealing his divinity. And then on the right here, this is a mural that shows Judas kissing Jesus on the cheek. Now, none of the Gospels actually say that he was kissed on the cheek. It just says that Jesus was kissed. And so I'm not sure where that tradition has come from. But, it's thought that, Jesus, when he saw that Jesus was, when Judas was coming towards him, he said, "Friend, why have you come?" And so, students typically kiss the hand of their master. Close friends will kiss, their friends on the cheek. And so maybe that's where the tradition will come from. How many have heard that Jesus was kissed on the cheek? Because that's how yeah, that's what I was taught. But, reading all the Gospels, none of them really say that specifically happened.
Well, the only other reference that I can think of was the one where Israel came back to Edom, his brother,
Mm-hmm.
and again with the kissing.
Greetings.
Or it's more of a
Very commonplace. Yeah.
it's more of a greeting.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the epistles in closing encourage you to greet one another with a holy kiss, some sort of,
It's a
just a,
Eastern custom.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a close.
It's
Sure.
in Mexico and South America and like
Oh, sure.
Most
oh
not
yeah,
Western
most
places.
most countries except for United States.
Yeah, Hawaii
So-
does it too.
Luke 22, you have that up there?
For
I'm going to read the kiss part.
oh, okay, yeah, go for it.
While he was still speaking, behold, a multitude came, and the one called Judas, one of the 12, was preceding them, and he approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? And when those who were around him saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? And a certain one of them, who we just read was Peter, struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. Jesus answered him and said, stop, no more of this. He touched the ear and healed him.
Hmm.
So, he tried to kiss him.
So you try to kiss him.
Jesus went, no, no, no.
But yeah, it just, references the idea that, they were obviously close, and, the intentions obviously were malicious. Now, it's interesting, fun fact, Judas is actually the only apostle that the Bible actually says where he came from. So Iscariot is linked to Keriot, which is a town located south of Jerusalem. So he's the only one that's identified by his town of origin. The other apostles are thought to come from the region of Galilee. So in some ways he was an outsider in more than one way.
Matthew 26 says that he actually kissed him. Hail, Rabbi, and kissed him.
So does Luke. Matthew and Mark.
Okay, so from here, now we're going to, so Jesus was just arrested, and now he's going to be brought to the high priest Caiaphas. So if we can get a reader, Matthew 26:57 to 75.
To what?
57 to 75.
Those who had seized Jesus led him off to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the Torah teachers and elders were assembled. Peter followed at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest. Then he went inside and sat down with the guards to see what the outcome would be. The head priest and the whole Sanhedrin looked for some false evidence against Jesus so they may put him to death. But they didn't find any, even though many liars came forward to give testimony. At last, however, two people came forward and said, This man said, I can tear down God's temple and build it up again in 3 days. The high priest stood up and said, Have you nothing to say to the accusation these men are making? Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, I put you under oath. By the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. Jesus said to them, The words are your own, but I tell you that one day you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of, is it the Father? Is it
Power,
power? And coming down on,
dunamis.
what's that? Coming on the clouds of heaven. At this the high priest tore his robes. Blasphemy, he said. Why do we still need witnesses? You heard him blaspheme. What is your verdict? Guilty, they answered. He deserves death. And they spit in his face and pounded him with their fists. And those who were beating him said, Now you, Messiah, prophesy to us. Who hit you that time? Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard when a servant girl came up to him. You too were with Jesus from Galilee, she said. But he denied it in front of everyone. I don't know what you're talking about. He went out to the porch, and another girl saw him and said to the people there, This man was with Jesus of Nazareth. Again he denied it, swearing, I don't know the man. After a little while, the bystanders approached Peter and said, You must be one of them. Your accent gives you away. This time he began to invoke a curse on himself as he swore, I do not know the man. And immediately a rooster crowed. Peter remembered what Jesus had said, Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and cried bitterly.
Thank you. So, if you go online and you search, the trial of Jesus, you'll find a lot of different information. Some say that, that he was tried truthfully and legally, but yet not ethically. And others will say that he was tried, completely illegally. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, we know what our current judicial system, what our typical judicial system follows. Everybody has a right to a fair trial, or at least we're supposed to.
I'm sorry, I have resentments towards our legal system. It doesn't have anything to do with what you said.
But the Sanhedrin, which were the leaders of the Jewish community, they had their own rules as well, and there was a couple reasons why they were just trying to push this as fast as possible so that they could kind of wash their hands of it and get it over with. And the trial of Jesus is thought to be illegal for a number of different reasons. Number one, Jesus was arrested secretly at night by the priests and elders, who they themselves were going to be his judges, later on. And so, yeah, it usually doesn't look good if you're being arrested by people that are already judging you. And secretly at night, you typically are going to be arrested during the day, where, witnesses can be brought forward, in both, in prosecution as well as, to your defense. Which also brings us to the fact that, the initial proceeding with his trial was actually held privately at night. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke mention that the priests and elders came together once daybreak came, but no session of the court of the Sanhedrin was actually supposed to take place at night before the morning sacrifice is going to take place. So yeah, the fact that this is all happening at night, certainly makes things questionable. The chief priest was questioning him before sunrise. No witnesses were there to defend him. They tried to bring plenty of witnesses to talk against him, but he didn't really have any chance to, really defend himself. And we know that they were looking to put him to death, which, that's a capital offense, and if we know that, with the Last Supper, leading into Passover, in cases of capital crime, no trial actually should commence either on the day before a holiday or on a Friday leading into the Sabbath, because, well, if that case were to take longer than expected, which typically a capital offense, you're going to want to do your due diligence to, make sure that, you have all your ducks in a line. If that trial were to continue on, that would lead into a Sabbath or the holiday, which would have to, everything would have to be postponed. And so, none of those things really should take place. It really should be postponed until, after the festival would take place. And then the trial of Jesus, I already alluded to this, but it was concluded in one day. And so trials that terminate on the same day with a sentence of death pronounced cannot be concluded because there really isn't an opportunity for witnesses to really come and be able to present themselves either in defense or in prosecution. So basically the whole idea is that the timing of this happened very fast. It happened at night, and really didn't give Jesus a fair chance for a trial. We already knew that he was going to be put to death. They already knew that they wanted to put him to death. So how can you really give him a fair trial if you already know what your verdict is going to be?
So they already knew that the other guy was going to be set free then?
No, that's not Caiaphas.
No, this is just the Sanhedrin portion.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Which, yes,
Okay, sorry.
by Jewish law, they actually aren't allowed to put people to death. They have to
They have to hand it up to Rome.
They have to give it to Rome to do.
And that's why, what's his name, washed his hand through it, so he wouldn't be safe then.
Right.
So in verse 57, then Holly read, it's interesting that they arrested him and took him to Caiaphas' house, and the Sanhedrin was already gathered. They were waiting for him.
Yeah.
This is prototypical kangaroo court.
I didn't realize how, I mean, I knew it was crooked. I didn't realize how crooked.
So this is the church of Saint Peter in Gallicantu. Gallicantu. A Roman Catholic church located on the eastern slope of Mount Zion to commemorate the denial of Peter. This is believed to be the location of the palace of Caiaphas, the high priest who sat in judgment over Jesus, and where Peter's 3 denials of Jesus took place.
Where's that on the map?
So it's actually right over here. So it's actually just to the north of where the upper room is thought to have taken place. And so you can actually see right on the weather vane, it's a little rooster that they put up there. But yeah, this commemorates the location of the 3 denials, and it incorporates elements of what was thought to be the house of Caiaphas. Oh. Okay, great. All right, so we know that Jesus, when he was arrested up here, Garden of Gethsemane, and then he was brought all the way down through the Kidron Valley and then up to the house of Caiaphas. And so you can see this is actually the Mount of Olives back here. And so the Garden of Gethsemane would actually be over here. So he would have come over and then up through this pathway here. And this is just a little carving, I guess, of Jesus being brought to his trial. And then as you go up, so that pathway would be, if you're looking at this picture, it's going to be over here. And so you'd be coming up, and then here's the church. And then this is the courtyard where Peter had thought to have stopped and warmed his hands, and people were accusing him of knowing who Jesus was, or being with Jesus, rather. We can see this is a statue, Non Novi Ilium, which is Latin for I do not know him, which stems from Luke 22. And so adjacent to this area here, so if we were to follow the hill down a little bit, you actually have these pits, underground caves. And so the caves are thought to be, this was actually used as a public jail. And likely this is where Jesus was held the night before his death. And later the apostles Peter and John were likely held in these little pits as well when they were preaching the name of Jesus in the temple after the resurrection. And you can read about that in Acts 5. Now these pits, there's actually one specifically that's thought to be the one that Jesus was put in, which is called the Sacred Pit. And we don't actually, the Bible actually doesn't make any specific mention of Jesus being put in a pit like this, but they are extrapolating that idea just in the fact of the location of the house of Caiaphas, these pits. And if we go back and read from the prophet Jeremiah, he himself was found in a very similar situation against the king Zedekiah when Babylon was coming against Jerusalem. That's Jeremiah 38. Jeremiah was declared to be a public nuisance, and he was lowered into a pit with ropes in the guard's courtyard. And so, yeah, it's a very deep hole where you're basically lowered in by ropes into this. So here's the hole, and you're lowered down. Obviously, this is all cut out now, but yeah, you're lowered down into this pit. And it may be kind of hard to see on this picture here, but with any pit, you're going to have little rough areas within the stone. And so, yeah, I don't think you can really see it, but looking at this particular area right here, from a certain angle, it looks like there's the face of Jesus looking at you. So it's kind of, it's kind of like when people burnt their toast and they saw Jesus' face in it. But, just with the location and the fact that there's a face there, then, people will say things.
Obviously.
Yeah. But the Sacred Pit, this is 15 feet deep. There's no doors, there's no windows, there's no light. The only entrance is through that small, narrow bottleneck at the top.
They lower the priest down to preach in it every day?
Well, this is all cut out now, so now there's stairs that you can go
That's
down.
too simple.
So they lowered it, but what was did they say what the typical dimension was?
Well, I just know that it's, 15 feet square, 20 feet deep. My apologies. So 20 feet, going from here all the way down there. And then, about 15 feet square. So it's a pretty big pit.
It's actually bigger than, what was the room?
Well, they used it as a public jail. So they would keep prisoners there.
What happens if they starve and then they're just down there and then you're laid down with their bodies?
Can you not?
That's my
Oh well, sucks to be the next prisoner.
Oh my god.
Well, you gotta depending on how long they're down there, you might have some food.
Oh gosh, Laura.
Well,
That was
So Psalm 88, I can read this one.
In the Navy, right, Paul?
So Psalm 88, you have put me in the lowest pit, the darkest depths. And somebody want to read Jeremiah 38, just so you have an idea what happened to him?
Tie in Jonah in the belly of the whale, too.
Yeah, in the darkest pit.
Pit of Sheol.
Yeah.
There are some people that think Jonah actually died.
Well, I believe it did. Kind of hard to breathe. No air.
What are we at, 31, 35?
Yeah, just 1 through 5.
How did he stay alive?
Huh? But Shephatiah, the son of Methan, okay,
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
lot of
names
I
here.
said to all to the people, here is what Adonai says. Whoever remains in this city will die by the sword, famine, and plague. But whoever leaves and surrenders to the custom will stay alive. His own life will be his only spoils of war, but he will stay alive. Adonai says that the city will certainly be handed over to the army of the king of Babel, and he will capture it. And the leader said to the king, please let this man be put to death, because by speaking such words to the soldiers left in the city and to all the people, he is demoralizing them. This man is seeking not to benefit this people, but to harm them. The king said, all right, he said, all right, he's in your hands, but for the king prevented you from doing this as you please.
Oh.
Sorry, I just didn't do the big names.
That's okay. Oh, how about one more?
Then they took Jeremiah and threw him into the cistern of the king's son, which was in the guards' quarters, and they let him into it with ropes. In the pit there was no water, but there was mud, and Jeremiah sank into the mud.
Perfect.
Ugh.
Yeah, so they likened the fact that, similar things may have happened between the two.
Yeah.
All right, now after that, now we're going to be walking along the Via Dolorosa, which is Latin for the sorrowful way. This is a processional route following the 14 stations of the cross, which was originated during the Crusades by Franciscan friars. They believed that Christians should have the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of Jesus on his final day to allow for prayer and reflection. Now, 8 of the 14 stations of the traditional stations are actually based off of happenings in the Bible. The other 6 are just religious traditions held by the early 13th century Crusaders when they were established. So, these were the ones. And then it wasn't until Pope John Paul II, he introduced the scriptural way of the cross in 1991. So if you wanted to follow that, you could certainly do so. But yeah, as Catholics, I know, we tend to put a big emphasis on Stations of the Cross.
Why is that?
Well, so it's meant to be a pilgrimage, and back in the day, way back when this was constructed, it was thought that, everybody should have the opportunity to come to Jerusalem and be able to, follow the footsteps of Jesus, so to speak. But then as time went on, they realized, well, not everybody would have that ability to do so. And so, churches were saying, well, if you can't go to Israel, well, why can't we just be able to make our own stations and be able to do that within our churches, with our congregation? And so eventually the Pope said, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. So most Catholic churches, all Catholic churches as far as I'm aware of, have set up Stations of the Cross, around their where their assembly is. And so typically during Lent, they'll actually do the different stations. Sometimes they'll have actors that will come in and act it out. But yeah, there's a whole procession that you can lead yourself through Jerusalem to get to Golgotha. Yes.
I can hardly
Thing.
hear you. What are you asking?
Things in the
They
corner.
look like
Oh,
video
tiny.
cameras.
Oh, up here? Yeah, security cameers.
Yeah,
So cute.
that's
That was
why we have
live
video of
stream.
Jesus.
That's how we know.
They were live streaming his meeting with Pilate. Back to
I
Rome.
think those are actually more recent editions. I think that they were there in
Oh, that's
2000.
right, the Crusades, right?
Yeah. Well, they replaced the more antiquated videos.
That's
Yeah.
for Ghost Adventures. Like,
The guy sitting on the pedestal with a Polaroid. That's the old
the old school.
Snapping.
That's cute.
It replaced the
And
town
in the
crier.
rain.
Yeah.
Now it's spiritual.
So we had to get up early one morning, which early is all,
Define early.
yes, I think we had to get up around 4.
That's
Well, that's early.
Yeah.
I only get up at 4 to fish.
Because, yeah, we basically wanted to walk the streets of Jerusalem and be able to see the different markers, because you wanted to get there before the businesses started to open up their shops, and it would get super busy. Plus, once you actually get to, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it gets super busy, in there. So the earlier you can get there, the better. All right, it's 11 o'clock, so we will we'll start the Via Dolorosa next time.
Yeah.
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot to commemorate.
I heard that.
So yeah, we'll go through the Stations of the Cross next time. All right, any questions about what we talked about today? Or comments? Interesting stuff.
Did they let you go in that tower?
So, no. Well, we didn't actually have the opportunity to do so, but you can actually get in there. Apparently, it's very luxurious. Because this actually, so the Citadel, Tower of David, that's this portion right here. That's meant to guard Herod's palace. And so you can go through all that area, and it's supposed to be really nice. But we didn't actually do that portion of the tour.
How many days did you stay in Jerusalem?
5. Yeah.
Was a good portion of your time there waiting in the line to see these things?
No. Yeah, we were moving around every day. Yeah. But like I said, we had a great tour guide, so you kind of knew where to go, what time to be there. I'll show you pictures of the streets of Jerusalem. Once the shops open up, and it's a madhouse. It's crazy.
How big was your tour group? Total?
We had 32 people. Yeah.
What kind of food is Israel into? Is it more Greek kind of?
Yeah, falafels,
Oh, yeah.
chickpea. Yeah.
Euros?
Euros. Yeah.
Falafel euros.
I love all of it.
It was good.
There wasn't McDonald's just like on the corner?
Dude,
Well-
every country I've been in, McDonald's is packed. It mystifies me. There's lines around the corner.
And they
Crazy.
say that we are all a bunch of hamburger-loving fools. Well,
Well,
I
we're
tell you
going.
what.
Not everybody.
The
Exactly.
American menu is very
Stereotype
exclusive to like
people.
America and
I mean-
England,
Mhm.
but if you go to like China or all these other places, they have a
And all
completely like
Americans are like
Different.
yeah revised menu.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know you can't get ketchup in the McDonald's in Amsterdam
Why not?
because they serve fries with mayonnaise.
Nice.
Canada.
Maybe tartar sauce, but not
How you down food?
mayonnaise.
You know, considering, talking about Starbucks, there actually wasn't a Starbucks, but there was some sort of cheap knockoff Starbucks. It was like
They're actually,
Star Trucks or something like that.
It's in the policy, but they don't, the Jews do not like Starbucks.
Oh, yeah?
I got kicked out of a Jewish bagel shop for bringing Starbucks in.
You're right.
Where did this happen?
Get out of here! California.
Are you sure you didn't
That's
go
kinda
into the
funny.
coffee bean?
Oh,
The coffee bean doesn't like Starbucks.
So you were in Hollywood?
Huh?
You were in Hollywood?
No,
I mean, that's where it's 95%
The
Jewish.
Jewish, yeah.
close.
Seriously, yeah.
I was close to it.
So what did, what was the cost of your trip, if you don't mind me prying?
You know, my parents took care of it.
$4 million.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I'm, since we're like, don't have much going on this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go there, Joe.
Oh no, we're putting a partner together. That ought to be here. We're putting a partner together.
All right. Would somebody like to open us in prayer? Justin?
Dear Heavenly Lord, thank you for bringing this show together today. And help us see what it says and understand it and put it in our daily lives as we go about our day and week. And help us to become more and more mature in your name and you. And to stay amen.
Amen.